To function underwater, our eyes need an airspace in front of them, just as they do on land. This is why we wear dive masks underwater. Masks create an artificial airspace and allow our eyes to focus. Wearing masks, however, has a side effect, one you probably didn't anticipate. As light passes from the water, through the mask lens, and into the airspace next to your eyes, it bends, a process known as refraction. This creates a magnifying effect and explains why objects underwater appear 25% closer and 1/3 larger than they would on land. This is why, when you reach out to touch something that appears to be within arm's reach, you might find it just outside your grasp. As sunlight passes through water, the water absorbs much of its color. The color red is the first to be absorbed, followed by oranges, yellows, greens, and other colors of the spectrum. At a depth of 30 meters, or 100 feet, little color remains other than blues, grays, blacks, and whites. This is why divers frequently carry lights with them, even during the day. Doing so allows us to see how an object's colors might appear were it closer to the surface. Suspended particles, known as turbidity, not only affect visibility, they can also impact color underwater. For example, the algae found in some bodies of fresh water can give everything a decidedly greenish appearance. The more suspended particle matter there is in water, the more rapidly colors are absorbed. This is why there can appear to be less color in shallow, turbid water than there is in deeper water that is clear. The so-called silent world is anything but. Underwater, you'll hear the sounds of your own breathing, the snapping and clicking of feeding fish, and the noises made by boats passing nearby. Just as light travels differently underwater, so does sound. Being 800 times denser than air, water conducts sound both farther and faster. How much faster? Well, underwater, sound travels roughly 4 times as fast as it does in air, and this leads to an interesting consequence. Above water, we're able to tell the direction from which a sound is coming because of the minute delay between when a sound reaches one ear and when it reaches the other. Underwater, sounds arrive at our ears almost simultaneously, making it difficult to tell which direction they're coming from. This can be a problem when there's a boat overhead, as it's difficult to tell how close the boat is and the direction from which the boat is approaching. The best thing to do when you hear a boat underwater is to remain close to the bottom and not approach the surface until the sound is completely gone. One of the most significant challenges the underwater environment presents is staying warm. Water conducts heat away from our bodies 25 times faster than air does. That's why air that's at room temperature feels comfortable, but water at exactly the same temperature feels downright cold. As a general rule, while it's very difficult to be too warm underwater, being too cold is all too easy. That's why anytime the water is colder than 30 degrees centigrade, that's about 86 degrees Fahrenheit, you need some form of thermal protection. And let's face it, The odds of you ever being in water that is naturally that warm are pretty slim. Knowledgeable divers seldom wear anything less than a full-length 3mm wetsuit, regardless of how warm the water may seem. The consequences of being too cold underwater go beyond simple discomfort. Cold can affect judgment, coordination, and your body's ability to resist decompression sickness. So why risk any of these problems when it's so easy to dress right, stay warm, and have fun? Among the many things that make the aquatic environment different is that underwater, animals don't tend to run away from us the way they do on land. In fact, so long as they can remain outside of arm's reach, most aquatic animals will be content to simply ignore us. Divers pose a vastly greater threat to underwater plants and animals than they do to us. As a result, we have an obligation to behave responsibly anytime we are underwater. This includes being aware of where our hands, legs, feet, fins, and body are at all times. Not stirring up silt or sediment. Suspended particle matter can make it difficult for animals such as coral polyps to breathe and feed. And making certain that you and your equipment avoid contact with the bottom at all times. This can cause extensive environmental damage. It's important to understand that the slightest touch on a coral polyp destroys the organism's protective membrane, causing permanent damage. This is why buoyancy control is such an important skill. Not only does your ability to control buoyancy make diving easier and safer, it helps you avoid damaging the fragile underwater environment. The rules and regulations governing scuba diving, the harvesting of aquatic animals, and interaction with marine mammals can vary from one location to the next. It's your responsibility to learn what these rules are and obey them, as well as to support local conservation efforts. When diving in a marine park or sanctuary, the local management agency will generally post its rules or require local dive operators to make you aware of them. At some destinations, dive operators are required to collect fees, which help support the local marine park or sanctuary. Remember, this money is being used to make your diving more enjoyable. If you have questions about the conservation rules that may apply in your area, just visit your local SDI Dive Center. The plants and animals that live underwater have a lot more to fear from us than we do from them. Nevertheless, aquatic life injuries can happen, usually because of a diver's carelessness. The most common aquatic life injury occurs when divers scrape against the sharp edges of coral or the rusty edges of decaying wrecks. The resulting scrapes and abrasions are highly prone to infection. Worse, while contact with coral may injure you, it destroys the coral. Adequate exposure protection, good buoyancy control, and constant awareness can help protect you from scrapes and abrasions. Some aquatic animals possess stinging cells called nematocysts. These cells produce toxins that, when touched, can produce symptoms ranging from a mild rash or sting to anaphylactic shock or even paralysis. As with scrapes and abrasions, you can avoid aquatic animal stings by wearing full-length exposure protection and not touching anything. Some animals, such as scorpionfish and lionfish, have poisonous spines. Bear in mind, however, that these animals can't swim up and attack you. To be injured, you have to be the aggressor and touch them first. Ironically, the aquatic life injury new divers fear most is the one that almost never happens. Contrary to what you've seen and heard, sharks, barracudas, eels, and other marine predators have virtually no interest in nibbling on us. The rare instances in which animals do bite divers are almost always the result of the animal defending itself or a case of mistaken identity. Avoiding such injuries is incredibly easy. Don't corner, grab, or threaten any aquatic animal. Don't attempt to feed fish or other animals. Don't stick your hands blindly into holes in rocks or coral. A hole could be somebody's home. And finally, don't wear any shiny jewelry or loose-fitting clothing that a nearsighted animal might mistake for a wiggling fish.